those of us in law enforcement are committed to justice for every race, every gender, every person.
The politics of race trumped the rule of law, and a political calculation was made. It was the wrong decision.
This was not a racial incident.
George Zimmerman is not a racist.
My dad usually tells me, before I leave the house, leave my heart at the house, and put on my armor. He was my age, and that it could have been me.
This case is going to hurt racial relations in this country, no matter what the outcome. And that's absurd.
All right, let's just put it out there. Jury selection just around the corner, and race is in the top of everyone's list on how this jury selection process is going to go down. I want to bring back in my legal dream team, but let's start here. Let's start, because let's presume, ladies and gentlemen here, that people just don't know how jury selection is done. On how, some people might think, Judge, that jury selection is done like this. All right, the defense, I want that juror. Then the prosecution says, all right, I want that juror. How does it really happen down in Florida, Judge Alex?
Well, the judge first gets to ask questions of the jurors, and then each of the attorneys, the prosecutor and the defense attorney, get to ask their questions. And the goal there, of course, is to find a jury that's going to be able to set aside what they have heard outside of the courtroom, any preconceived notions, or set aside any feelings that they have that might prejudice one side or the other, and listen to the evidence and decide based on that. Race will definitely be a factor. It'll be a factor for a couple of reasons. One is obviously the defendant being white or Hispanic and the victim being a young black male. And secondly, the prosecution is claiming second-degree murder, which requires ill will, hatred, spite, or an evil intent. So to the extent that they're going to rely on a claim of racism to give them that, they're going to want to make sure that they have jurors on there who are going to be receptive to the possibility that he was motivated by racism. And the defense is obviously going to try to avoid jurors who are ready to pull the trigger on a claim of racism without having heard any evidence. The reality is, there is racism out there. I mean, the ones who claim it's always
Judge, I hate to interrupt you, but let's just pull it back for a second here, okay? Before we get into the nitty-gritty of picking a jury for this case and race, Darren Kavanoky, again, once the judge voir dires and you voir dire the jury, right? You still don't get to draft jurors, right? Jurors are put in there. It's the opposite. You guys exclude people, right?
It's a deselection process, and I agree that it is the most important part of the case. If you can't find an audience that's receptive to your position, regardless of how strong or weak your case is, if you don't have a good audience, you're in trouble.
All right, but jurors who make it past the judge's voir dire and your voir dire get put in the box, and then you say, Carrie, all right, please excuse juror number 4 because for whatever reason you don't want juror 4 there. You're not picking it, you're getting rid of jurors.
That's right. And you can get rid of jurors for any reason except for a few reasons. And one reason where you can't get rid of jurors is based on race.
Oh, interesting how that works. So you can exclude, all right, Judge, so jurors can be excluded for any reason that the attorneys want, but not race.
There's a few other protected categories. That's true.
Okay.
If one side is excluding a juror specifically because they are black or specifically because they are white, the judge can override that exclusion and force seat the juror.
Well, or force them, because what we're doing in jury selection is we're trying to elicit some challenge for cause. See, one thing to keep in mind in the rules of the game
What's a challenge for cause,
Okay,
Darren?
so a challenge for cause is a juror that cannot be fair and impartial. And they've got some kind of a bias.
Maybe they pass the judge's test, but you want to bring something out and say, Judge, no, this person can't be fair and impartial.
Because I have unlimited challenges for cause, but I have a limited number of what we call preemptory challenges, which is any reason other than race, where I just don't like somebody. I don't like their views. I don't like the way they look at me. I just don't like them for whatever reason.
They have too much hair.
And in my case, that could be a reason.
Right.
And so I may only have 10 or 20 of those to use in a given case. So I want to try and get somebody out for cause so I can hold on to my preemptory challenges.
All right.
That way I can shape who's there.
I think we did a good job here of explaining the process for people who aren't familiar, maybe haven't tried cases like all of us have. But I'm not letting you guys go yet because we're going to pull back the curtain. What are lawyers really thinking during jury selection? Whether they like it or not, these guys are going to confess as to what really happens. All right, welcome back to Now in America. We're pulling back the curtain on how jury selection really takes place and what is really going to happen in the jury selection for the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case. It's all taking place in Seminole County. So let's take a look at the demographic breakdown of potential jurors in Seminole County. We begin with the population, which is, what's the final number? 430,838 people. Okay, now how do they break down demographically? Break down. Let's take a look at the pie chart. We got the pie chart? Get that pie chart up there. I need a piece of pie. Here we go. All right, 66% of Seminole County is white. 18% is Hispanic. And 12% is black. And we got a little sliver that is everything else. All right, I've got my dream team back here. Let's be honest. Prosecutors in this case want black jurors. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Most likely. I see it more as a cultural thing than a race thing, but...
Look at you. Come on. No. Wait, all right, let's start here. Let's take one step backwards, all right? When you guys are picking a jury, you lawyers, the first thing you see is the color of the skin of the jury that's in the box and the jurors that could be put in the box.
And gender and age.
And gender and age.
I don't see color, I see bald.
Okay, he's again not being honest. But Judge Alex, you told us that you can't exclude a juror based on race, yet in this case, can we all agree that the prosecution is going to want black jurors and the defense wants as many black jurors out as possible and as many white jurors as possible in? Yes?
That's correct.
I don't think it's quite that clear cut. Because
really?
I don't think we can make those kinds of sweeping generalizations.
You guys don't do that. Honestly, we're pulling back the curtain, Darren.
No, I think it's something, it's certainly a factor, and you're going to look at that and say, okay, who's my ideal juror? But I really believe that an ideal juror is more about beliefs.
Okay.
It's the lenses that they view life through.
Let me pose it this way. A black juror is placed in the box. If the defense is allowed to, will they want that juror excused?
I don't think you can say it just on that one thing. Now, your knee-jerk may be, okay, look,
okay, let me say it a different way. There's a black juror in the box. Will the prosecution excuse that juror? Judge Alex.
This is why, Vinny. The reason is not because the black juror would not be a good juror and why the black juror cannot be fair and impartial. That's absolutely untrue. The reason why they would want him excluded is because they don't want a juror who's going to sympathize or be more likely to sympathize with the other side. And when you're expecting them to lay out their claims of racism, the other side is going to say, well, we don't want a juror who has felt claims of racism because they're going to be closer to believing that than other jurors. It's completely improper to do. You can't exclude jurors for race. And if I'm the judge, I look very carefully to see if that is what they're doing. But prosecutors get very talented and defense attorneys get very talented at coming up with other reasons, inquiring about things, and then saying, I'm not cutting him for that reason. I'm cutting him because
okay, but what's
he's
really
a school
happening?
teacher, and I think he's going to sympathize with kids.
All right, now let's put the other situation in there. Let's say, and in this case, there's only going to be 6 jurors sitting in judgment of George Zimmerman. It's not 12. It's going to be 6. Let's say all 6 faces in that jury box are white, and the prosecution still has some challenges. They're going to bounce them, hoping that they get someone other than a white juror. Carrie, agree?
I agree. I think you're right. I think if there are 6 white jurors in that box, I do think the defense team is going to feel much more confident.
All right. I appreciate your honesty, Your Honor. And Carrie, Darren Kavanaugh, you're always honest to a certain extent.
Well, I actually got a point here.
We're out of time. I'm sorry.
That's hurtful.
All right. Some end of the school. Well, I'm sorry, Darren. That's just the way it is. We run out of time. We've got commercials.